So Craig and Charlotte had two children, Christiane and Garland, and when Christiane was 6 years old back in 2008, she was a precious little girl, having a great time, just a normal kid, and they noticed that she started sitting up real close to the TV when she was watching something, and when she was reading, she was getting really close to the books, and so they took her to the doctor and said, we think she needs glasses. And they got lucky, and they got a doctor who didn't immediately say, oh, it's nothing, or, it's just, she said, I see something, and I want you to go see a specialist. And so I think within a couple of days, they had the diagnosis of Batten disease, and I think initially they were like, okay, blind, we can be blind, that'll be okay. And so it was, really devastating to get a much worse diagnosis. And I think they are so unique in that what would cripple most people, they said, well, we're going to do something about that. We're going to make a difference, and they had an awesome community that you guys know because your parents are a part of that said, what can we do to help? And they said, what we can do is raise money for research. And Craig was in a good position because he worked for a life sciences business. So, many parents who get a devastating diagnosis like that, they don't have any medical background, any scientific background, and wouldn't even know where to begin. But Craig knew there's kind of a smarter way to do this. And so they established the Beyond Batten Disease Foundation. And one of the first things they did was to hire a scientist to come in and read all the publications that had any reference to Batten disease. And it's like 17,000 since 1890 or whenever I told you it started. Read all of those publications and figure out, where are we? I mean, what have we figured out, and what don't we know, and what do we need to do? And then handpick sort of the areas where we can build on what's already been learned. And that's kind of one of our goals, is bring everybody together. And most of those disease groups don't have any kind of scientific advisor. We have a scientist who is on the staff, and so she can very objectively look at people's suggestions, or they say, we'd like to study. This is what usually happens. There are very few Batten researchers. What you're trying to do is bring new people into the field, and in order to do that, you have to have tools like iPS stem cells or registries or things that don't really exist for Batten disease right now, to make it attractive, because no one wants to go study a disease where they don't have any tools to use and anywhere to start, right? Yeah. So one of the other ways we spend money that we think is beneficial is by creating some of those platforms, and then once we have the platforms, then new researchers will be interested in coming into Batten disease research, which is good, and we can share those resources with anybody who wants to study it. And that's kind of foundation, but they really had a great approach to how we were going to do the science and how we were going to raise the funds, and we're super grateful that we have people who will support it. The largest grant ever given to a research organization for Batten disease was $2.5 million, and that's because we had some awesome benefactors who put up $2 million, and the foundation raised the other $500,000. So the goal of all of this is for us to fund long enough to get it to a point where a pharmaceutical company will swoop in and say, we'll take it from here. So we aren't really expecting to ever raise $1.3 billion. I think we estimate that people have done it for about $60 million. But at that point, that's when a pharmaceutical company would come in and take it from there. And so really, that's, I think as a foundation, we've moved really fast comparatively. If you look at the 12 years, and for much less money than most groups, but it's also the closer you get, then the harder it gets, I think. The hill gets pretty steep. And so that's our goal to take. We've got 6 potential drug compounds that they think really could work. And when I say 6, it means there's probably 3, and they can mix them up different ways. And so there are many, many, many things we still have to do to get to a clinical trial, but we're sort of on our way that way. So we're validating some research that's been done, making sure those experiments stand up when somebody else does them. And it will take some time because they do it on mouse models, and the mice live for a year, and you have to watch the full lifespan. And, so there's some hurdles for sure, but I think things are going in a really, really good direction.